Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about NASCAR in Sonoma, Northern California wine country, and Daniel Suarez from Mexico gets his first career win. I'm going to talk about him and what this means for his career after all the heartbreak he's experienced, and not only his Cup career, but this season alone. I'm going to talk a little bit about the regular season point standings, which is kind of heating up, and then of course we're going to talk about the top 10 and some surprise finishers. Chris Buescher, Michael McDowell, Kevin Harvick running in the top 5 today. We'll certainly get into all that. But I do want to start out on a bit of a negative note to talk about the race. I don't like to talk about packages a whole lot or how the racing itself was a whole lot on the show. But I do think it needs to be mentioned that the race today at Sonoma, the road course race on a fairly flat racetrack, really wasn't the best. It wasn't a whole lot of passing. But the concern again, like I said, there's going to be races sometimes where there's not a whole lot of passing, and that's okay. It's okay to have essentially uneventful races, or more boring or more calm is a word I would rather use, races. That's okay to see every now and then, and you're going to get those races, and that's okay. The problem is cars stalling out, and when I hear the word stall out, that is the issue, because that means there cannot be a good race. That means it's going to have to be boring, and that's when the problems come in at certain racetracks. I do think that needs to be addressed. I know there's been some talks this week about getting rid of the diffuser on the bottom of the race car. I don't know all about the aerodynamics of the race car, but I know it has, changed things up a bit, and on the flat racetrack, it tends to create a lot of dirty air behind the lead pack or the lead car. Therefore, unless you have a way faster race car, it is more difficult to pass and maneuver your way through the field, especially when you're the leader. Clean air is a major advantage, and you saw that today. You've seen that at a few other tracks this year. I go back to Martinsville is obviously a great example. So I just think that needs to be mentioned. It's obviously the next gen car is still really great, but I have heard comments that the dirty air and the stalling out is worse with this car on certain racetracks than it was with the previous car, and that's not good because the previous car was really horrendously terrible for that. So I did think that needed to be addressed. It's obviously something that will be looked at. I think NASCAR is already looking into it. I know they're supposed to be running a closed test here coming up in Martinsville, probably a couple other tracks to try to, prevent the stalling out. Like I said, boring racing, bad racing, drivers dominating a race will happen, and that's okay. It's the stalling out that is the issue. But anyway, that's besides the point. NASCAR is obviously working to fix that. But let's talk about the winner. Daniel Suarez in his 195th start finally gets to victory lane. Now this is an interesting story because he's obviously proved himself to be a Cup Series caliber driver, not only today with the win, but even before that by winning the Xfinity Series championship. Geez, I believe that was 2016 maybe, a long time ago. And then of course he raced at Joe Gibbs for 2 years. The results at Joe Gibbs Racing in the 19 car, he replaced Carl Edwards, and it started the 2017 season was Daniel Suarez. Just really the results were horrendous. I remember looking at the scoreboard. I mean, he would be 25th to 30th on a weekly basis in that race car. Every now and then would crack a top 20, but just wasn't showing the speed and the consistency that he needed. So after those 2 years, unfortunately, it was cut. Then I believe it was 2019 and 2020 that he raced for Stewart-Haas Racing. A little bit better results, a little bit better, running a little bit better, but not being able to compete with the other Stewart-Haas Racing teams. He was obviously the 4th team at Stewart-Haas Racing, just didn't really have the results. But I think with all that experience, with all that learning, and obviously, like I said, he deserved the Cup ride with winning the Xfinity Series championship, running somewhat decent with Stewart-Haas Racing. But finally, when he went to Trackhouse, something clicked. And it wasn't even the very start. In 2021, he was way more consistent, but not, way better. But this year, Trackhouse Racing has put the money in, put the time in, put the effort with this new next-gen car, and it has showed. Daniel Suarez didn't get this win today as a fluke win. He's been running up front very consistently this year. Been battling for the lead. If you go back to the Coke 600, battled for the lead, led a whole lot of laps in the Coca-Cola 600, as well as his Trackhouse Racing teammate, Ross Chastain. This team right now is a major championship threat, and not only a threat for this season, but with this next-gen car moving forward, I think Trackhouse is now going to be considered a top team because they have a lot of wins. They have 2 wins this year with with Chastain, and then of course they have now the one win with Daniel Suarez. So extremely exciting for Daniel Suarez to win. You saw the great celebration. Trackhouse says like it's great for the sport because when they win, it's exciting. You know you're going to get something good. A lot of fun with this Trackhouse team, but also a lot of work being put in, and a lot of that fun is being earned for sure. A lot of work, and they are finally starting to get those results. So it's really refreshing to see Daniel Suarez after all the hard work, all the heartbreak this season alone, finally come to an end, and he finally gets that first career win. Everybody's excited to see him win. He's been running so well this year. It had some heartbreaking situations. Super exciting guy. Apparently a very respectful and nice guy in the garage. So that's certainly a good thing to finally see him get the victory. He's a good driver. He's been running really well this season, but the luck aspect of it and other people causing him problems really ruined it for him. Let's talk about a few of the guys that had some problems today. I think it is a point of concern. Kevin Harvick, who finished 4th, had major issues. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but Chase Elliott also had issues on pit road, costing him the win. Chase Elliott was probably going to win this race. I think he was the favorite to win. He's your road course ringer guy. I mean, he's really good at the road courses, but today made a mistake on pit road. And this is where I think Gustafson kind of lacks a little bit. Not lacks, but I think if Kyle Larson had the same thing happen, I think Cliff Daniels would have been able to stop that from happening. I really do, and I think he's an extremely good crew chief, and he'll probably be taking some time off. We'll get to that in a moment, obviously, as well. But that's just a bad mistake. The pit crew is for a top caliber team like Hendrick Motorsports. The crew chief and the pit crew have to understand the rules. You've already messed up the pit stop. You're already going to lose a lot of time, no matter the circumstance. Let's make sure we don't get another penalty. And they just made a major mistake, costing Chase Elliott a penalty. It was coming to the end of a stage. You were about to get a caution anyway. That was probably the race-winning thing that cost Chase Elliott. So that was really disappointing. I'm not even a Chase Elliott fan, but that was really disappointing to see, especially coming from Hendrick Motorsports, a top caliber team, to make such a silly mistake. Now, I know it's easy for me to, sit in front of the camera and say that. I know obviously things are going really fast when you're in a cup race. Things are happening in, to the split second, but that is something that I think the team can now look at and say, okay, let's make sure we check that next time we have a problem and make sure he gets all the way back into the box. I think the driver can be told this. Obviously, he can't see everything, but the pit crew started working on the car. I think it's more on the pit crew, even the crew chief a little bit, because I don't think anything, he didn't say anything to stop the crew. So that's obviously a concern, and hopefully they get that fixed moving forward. Kyle Larson, the guy who won the first stage, he looked to be really fast. Like I said, the Hendrick guys were really fast in this race. It looked like he was going to be the guy to get the win early on. Kyle Larson, he looked extremely fast, really, had the clean air, was able to blow everybody out. And then he had his issues, the pit cycle, the strategies they were using really just didn't work out. Then he had a tire fly off, so there goes Cliff Daniels for the next 4 weeks. Not really going that well right now for the 5 team, considering they shoulda, coulda, woulda won a few more races this year, like 3 to 4, and they have only won 1 race, and that was all the way back in February in California when we went to Southern California. Today we went to Northern California. So just wanted to mention those guys. Another driver I do want to just briefly talk about, Bubba Wallace, once again having some mechanical failure. I'm not sure if that was driver error with the shifting or if something just broke on the car that was completely out of his control. But once again, the 23 team of Bubba Wallace will finish in the back of the pack. This is not helping them points-wise whatsoever. Let's go through the top 10 real quick. I already mentioned Daniel Suarez. A great run for Chris Buescher in the 17 Ford. This team has not showed up at all. He actually did not race last week due to him testing positive for COVID. Glad he's okay. Glad he's back in the race car. But he finished second today, which is way better than his team owner. And then, of course, that team's obviously Brad Keselowski Racing is trying to, get things together. It's been a really rough season for those guys, so for them to finish second and have a shot at the win, at least get close to the leader, is certainly a positive sign for that team, as well as Brad Keselowski finishing in 10th. Michael McDowell, once again, he's finishing in the top 10 consistently now. He's been in the top 10 multiple times this year when I go through my list. I think this might be his 4th or 5th just this season alone. Michael McDowell showing some speed. I heard his post-race interview today. He even mentioned we just need a little bit more, and we think we can go out there and get some wins. So definitely want to watch the 95 or the 34 team. I'm sorry, the 34 team of Michael McDowell. I'm still used to him being in the 95 car. The 34 Ford of Michael McDowell. Be interesting to see if that team can get just that little bit of a step, maybe a little bit better luck, maybe a bit of a break, and be able to get a win this season like they did in 2021. Kevin Harvick, who's been out of it all year, like the whole top 10. Nobody really has been running in the top 10 consistently except McDowell and Suarez. But Kevin Harvick, who's been having a really rough patch since, hasn't won since Bristol 2020. I think it was 50-something races ago. He's on a long winless streak. Ended up finishing 4th. He's been showing a little bit more speed. Your Daytona 500 winner, still getting track time, still trying to learn all these new racetracks, but is pretty good at the road courses. He's finishing consistent at the 2 road courses this year. Austin Cindric finishes in the 5th position. Blaney finished 6th. Chastain finished in the 7th. The other Trackhouse Racing team, which didn't show a whole lot of speed today, but like I said, the dirty air was really playing a huge role. He ended up finishing 7th. Chase Elliott ended up finishing 8th. That's important because Chase Elliott's team is showing that they can still get the finishes. They were able to come back from the mistake they made, the really costly mistake that they probably should not have made, and were able to come back and get a top 10. That means they're going to gain that points lead and gain more points on Kyle Busch, who's trying to take that regular season championship away. And remember, the regular season champion does get 15 bonus points per round when the playoffs do start. So that is very important as well. So Chase Elliott, the consistency. He has some problems sometimes, has issues, but is so consistent. That's why he's a major threat really for the championship right now, I think, with the 1 win he has and potentially getting 15 bonus points in the championship. So we'll have to watch that. He's also trying to stay in front of Ross Chastain as well. So finishing in the top 10, he's obviously going to be holding both of those guys at bay. William Byron, just kind of not been that fast the last few weeks. He seemed to be the best car in the entire field, and it's kind of slowed down a little bit. Ended up finishing 9th, and then of course Brad Keselowski. I mentioned him and his teammate or his driver that he pays have finished in the top 10 today, so that's good for both of those cars to be in the top 10. It's been a rough start to their season, so they're taking anything they can get right now. Finished decent in the All-Star race, if you remember that. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this might be Brad's second top 10 of the year, including the Daytona 500, maybe. I think the only other race he finished in the top 10 was the Daytona 500. There might be another one snuck in there where he finished in the top 10. So yeah, that's really all there is to talk about after the Sonoma race. A mediocre Sonoma race. I just feel like the energy wasn't there. The stands seemed to be empty. It wasn't the most exciting, entertaining race. Thank God Daniel Suarez won because he kind of saved all that for us. And then, of course, like I said, I wanted to mention the points. Kyle Busch did spin out, giving Chase Elliott that bigger points lead. But that's really all there's to talk about after NASCAR in Northern California, Sonoma, California. We are taking an off week next week. I'm sure I'll be back next Sunday for something. I don't know what I'm going to do a video of yet, but I will definitely be back in 2 weeks for the NASCAR Nashville race. It should be exciting. The first race on NBC, by the way. Fox portion of the schedule does end this year. I'm excited for it. I think it should be great. NASCAR at Nashville with the next-gen car should be very entertaining. I'm really ready to see what we have there. Kind of a track, maybe you could compare it to St. Louis, maybe, potentially. But it should be interesting. So that's it. That's all there's to talk about. And, of course, about Kyle Busch spinning at the end of this race and getting a terrible 30th place finish. Let's get rowdy.